Hello everyone, welcome to another day of learning. So for today, we will talk about our fourth topic, which is the self in the Western and Eastern thoughts. We have three objectives for this lesson, and these are the following. Number one, to differentiate the concept of self according to Western thought against Eastern or Oriental perspectives. Number two, to explain the concept of self as found in Asian thoughts. And number three, to create a representation of the Filipino self. First, we will talk about the self based on the Eastern thought. So the following slides will talk about the Oriental philosophies. First on the Oriental thought is Confucianism. Historically speaking, Confucianism is the way of life propagated by Confucius in the 6th and 5th century before Christ era and followed by Chinese people for more than 2 millennia. Basically, Confucianism rests upon the belief that human beings are fundamentally good and teachable, improvable, and perfectible through personal and communal endeavor. Here, Confucianism can be seen as a code of ethical conduct on how one should properly act according to their relationship with other people. Thus, this is also focused on having a harmonious social life. Therefore, the identity and self concept of an individual are interwoven with the identity and status of his or her community or culture. Sharing of his or her community of culture, sharing its pride as well as its failures. In simpler terms, Confucianism revolves around the principle of one's relationship into its community. In Confucianism, we have two different perspectives of the self. First is self cultivation. It is seen as an ultimate purpose of life, but the characteristics of Sun Tzu, a man of virtue or noble character, is still embedded on his social relationships. This specific viewpoint is aimed at morally transforming the learners so that they can realize the way or the Tao. The learning process involves being committed to studying, improving oneself by observing rituals and living ethically and being guided by one's teacher. The other perspective in Confucianism is what we call the subdued self. It is the cultivated self wherein the personal needs are repressed or subdued for the good of the many. The definition of subdued is a mood of having been calmed or quieted. A person who has been calmed down after being angered is an example of someone who is subdued. Second on the Oriental thought is Taoism. Historically speaking, Taoism is a Chinese philosophy attributed to Lao Tzu. Taoism is therefore both a philosophy and a religion. It emphasizes doing what is natural and going with the flow, in accordance with the Tao, a cosmic force which flows through all things and binds and releases them. Specifically, Taoism is living in the way of Tao or the universe. However, Taoism rejects having one definition of what Tao is, and one can only state clues of what as they adopt a free-flowing, relative unitary as well as paradoxical view of almost everything. Furthermore, the self is not just an extension of the family or the community. It is a part of the universe, one of the forms and manifestations of the Tao. The ideal self is selflessness but not forgetting about the self. Although the goals of Taoism and Confucianism are similar, that they try to place individuals as parts of a larger experience, the difference lies on the extent of the relationship. The goal of Confucianism is to gain harmony with the people in society. However, the goal of Taoism is to gain harmony with the Tao and nature. Third on the Oriental thought is Buddhism. Historically speaking, Buddhism is a faith that was founded by Siddhartha Gautama, or the Buddha, more than 2,500 years ago in India. With about 470 million followers, scholars considered Buddhism as one of the major religions in the world. Specifically in Buddhism, the self is seen as an illusion born out of ignorance of trying to hold and control things or human centered needs. Thus, the self is also the source of all these sufferings. Since the self is seen as only an illusion, Buddhism from its earliest days has denied the existence of the self or the soul in its core philosophical and ontological texts. The difference between Taoism and Buddhism in terms of human nature is in Taoism, if humans are in tune with the Tao, their sufferings will cease. Taoism teaches that humans are capable of experiencing immortality. However, in Buddhism, ignorance as all sentient beings. And that concludes the self based on the Oriental thought. This second part is dedicated on the self based on the Western thought. Western perspective does not discount the role of environment and society in the formation of the self, but the focus is always looking toward the self. You compare yourself in order to be better, you create associations and bask in the glory of your self-esteem, you put primacy in developing yourself. In simpler terms, the focus of Western philosophy is on the I. However, not totally ignoring the role of environment and society in the formation of the self. One can also describe the Western thought looks at the world in dualities wherein you are distinct from the other person, but the creator is separate from the object he created, in which the self is distinguished and acknowledged. When we say duality, it is an instance of opposing or contrast between two concepts or two aspects of something. Here, the duality talks about the creator as a separate entity from the person that he created. Several studies show that Americans, for example, talk more about their personal attributes when describing themselves, while Asian in general talk about their social roles or the social situations that invoke certain traits that they deem positive for themselves. Western culture is what we call an individualistic culture since our focus is on person. Asian culture is called a collectivist culture as a group and social relations that is given more importance than individual needs and wants. Or in simpler terms, Western put emphasis on their individuality, then Asians who see themselves as a part of a collective culture. By valuing the individual, Westerners may seem to have loose associations or even loyalty to their groups. Competition is the name of the game, and they are more likely straightforward and forceful in making communication as well as decision making. One very good example of this is that Westerners have looser family ties than Asians. Westerners tend to separate from their parents when they reach the age of 18, however, Asians tend to stick together. They tend to stay in one house even though they have already their own families. Westerners also emphasize more on the value of equality even if they see that the individual can rise above everything else. Because everyone is on their own in the competition, one can say that is fair competition. This is one good quality of Westerners wherein everyone is given equal opportunity to rise, unlike in Oriental culture where crowd mentality is prevalent. Social construct is a shared assumption or perception of people in society. The Western social construct of the self can be characterized in three ways. First is individualistic self, where people are seen as independent and autonomous, and social behavior tends to be dictated by the attitudes and preferences of individuals. Second is self-sufficiency, which is having extreme confidence in one's resources and powers, etc. Third is self as being rational. In having a rational mind, one's thinking is focused and more logical, utilizing past experience, facts, and research to help one plan and make decisions. This table summarizes the differences between the Western and Eastern perspectives on the self. Western thought focuses on the I identity, while in Eastern thought, each person is encouraged to be an active player in society, to do what is best for society, as a whole rather than themselves. Western thought promotes individual goals, initiatives, and achievements, while Eastern thought upholds the rights of the families, communities, and collective supersede those of the individual. In Western thought, individual rights are seen as being the most important. Rules attempt to ensure self-importance and individualism. In Eastern, rules promote unity, brotherhood, and selflessness. In Western, independence is valued. There is much less of a drive to help others, which is frequently seen as shameful. In Eastern, working with others and cooperating is the norm, and everyone supports each other. In Western, people are encouraged to do things on their own and to rely on themselves. However, in Eastern, people are seen as a community, family, or nation more than as an individual. Lastly, in Western, people strive to their own successes. However, in Eastern, success is a communal experience. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you clearly understood the differences between the Eastern and Western thoughts of the self.